right, it's always a pleasure to have Chip Roy on. Chip, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Mark. How are you? Hope you had a great weekend.
I did. I hope you did, too. All right, Joe Biden doesn't want to negotiate to the extent as people have spoken. They want to blow the budget through the roof as well as the debt. I spent a lot of time on this Sunday on Fox as well as behind this microphone. Chip, where are we today? Do you know?
So I don't have the latest and greatest because I'm in the Rules Committee where we're actually fighting over student loans and a bunch of other, stupid bills from our Democratic colleagues. We're trying to stop them. But what I do have from my last conversation with Kevin earlier today, I know he was meeting with the president today. The news reports are that the tone was better, but they don't have an agreement. The fact is the president is still living in, fantasy land, that they can just straight up ignore our common sense positions while they try to enrich the elite through the use of their government and corporate cronyism policies, right? That's the bottom line. Our efforts and what we're trying to do, it's not just about money. People are losing sight. I think it's just about dollars and cents and debt for the sake of it. It's not, although that's important. It's about ending the subsidization of the things that are against the American dream and every hardworking American family out there. Stop funding an FBI that's undermining our freedom and that's politicized and going after the former president and going after Scott Smith in Loudoun County. You know all too well because you know that area. And, it's about stopping the subsidy of a great big, billion-dollar corporations with all these Green New Deal subsidies. And it's about ending an IRS expansion, which targets the poor and minorities more than anybody else. This is about propping up their rich elitist buddies and advancing their radical leftist agenda. They know it. They know the American people are onto it. We've got them in a corner. We've got them on the ropes. Now we got to finish this off and make sure we do something right for America.
Now, a couple of questions here, Chip. Number one, this constant reference to the 14th Amendment. There is no 14th Amendment bailout here. I've spent a lot of time on this. Others have too. If Biden does reach for the 14th Amendment, that is the gravest attack on the House of Representatives in the history of the House of Representatives by seizing the borrowing, spending, and taxing authority and using it in the executive branch. What do you think the Republicans in the House would do about that?
Well, we've been having a few conversations. We're hopeful that even this crazy administration under Biden would not go that far. I think get the joke. The Wall Street Journal laid it out fairly magnificently today, pointing out that literally that constitutional provision is about, you should actually prioritize paying the debt. That's the obligation that we're supposed to do, but you don't get to make the decision about how we borrow money in order how to pay for that debt. You just literally don't. It would be patently unconstitutional. I would like to think we'd be able to win that in court very quickly. But look, I'm just going to tell you how I would react. I can promise you that what they cannot do is manufacture money and print it. And when we get to September and we're dealing with the government funding mechanism, if the executive office of the president wants a single dollar that is appropriated for its existence, then it better darn well not think about doing this kind of thing. Like, this is literally getting into a separation of powers war and a constitutional crisis if they choose to invoke the 14th Amendment unlawfully and unconstitutionally to do what they do not have the power to do. And I would encourage all my Republican colleagues to be just as blunt that would be, basically open warfare with the Constitution by this Democratic administration.
Well, you'd have a president proposing a budget and funding a budget. I don't know how much more dictatorial I can get than that. And clearly that's not what the framers intended. And by the way, that's not what anybody who voted in Congress for that amendment, the 14th Amendment, ever said. No. And that's not what any of the ratification debates, any member of the state legislatures ever said. They're making this up out of whole cloth. And to me, this would be the most dire attack on the Constitution, not just in our lifetime, but to me, since the Civil War. You can't just seize power from another branch of government. But I want you to understand something, Chip. The President of the United States in Japan yesterday said he thinks he has this power. It's a timing problem, so he may not be able to use it because of the courts. But he actually said, I think I have this power. Now, I don't know of any president who's ever said that. Even Obama backed off of that.
Yeah, it's clear that he doesn't have the power, but it's also clear that he doesn't even know what he's saying, right? And I'm just sitting here in the Rules Committee where I just quoted back to the Democrats testifying the exact quotes from Nancy Pelosi where she laid out very specifically that the President of the United States didn't have the power to forgive these loans to the tune of $500 billion for these student loans, it was very clear. Most Democrats agreed that that was not something the president had the power to do. I'm hopeful the court will strike that down this summer, but Congress should be acting right now to defend Article 1 powers against an overreaching executive branch. And we're doing that with the Congressional Review Act in Rules Committee right now. We're going to pass that this week. And we're doing it in the debt ceiling debate, right? We include that provision in there to say we should remove it. It's unconstitutional. It's inequitable. It's wrong. And so, the president doesn't have this authority. He might think he does. I don't think he actually thinks he does. He might say he does, but he doesn't.
Federal government continues to take an enormous amount of money every month, regardless of what Congress does, no matter what happens to the budget, to the debt ceiling. Yep. It's not like the people stop paying their taxes. So you're taking, what, $350, $400 billion a month, correct?
Right. That's right.
And that doesn't stop. Now, Social Security, even under the theory of a trust fund, it doesn't need Congress to approve anything because it still operates under the old theory that there is a trust fund and that money's put aside. Same with Medicare. Same with the VA. Same with much of the military, as a matter of fact. And even the statutes that have been passed in the past prioritize these things. So there are ways, it's not the best way to do things, but there are ways for the Treasury Department to prioritize things, correct?
That's 100% correct. And to put a finer point on it, the very easiest thing the president could do is to pull up the bill that we passed, sign it into law. Now, you and I both know politically he doesn't want to do that. But he certainly could accept the premise that we have a say in this as the House of Representatives and pass a responsible debt ceiling increase with significant spending cuts along the lines that we just offered. He doesn't want to do that. Okay, well, you're the president. Then it is on you, right? It is on you. You're the one choosing to play the default game. But the fact is, what you just said, there will be no default. We will be able to pay the interest on our loans. We will be able to make other payments, Social Security and other things that people rely upon. What we will have to do is work through the difficulties of not having the full funding of the government at play. But you know what? That forces a lot of the tough decision-making that needs to be done. That's the point. That's why we have a debt ceiling. Every American gets that.
Mm-hmm. And if this debt isn't, if you don't begin to wrestle it to the ground, what will our economy, what will our finances look like then?
Well, right now we're on a track to roughly $50 trillion of debt in about a decade. Mm-hmm. What that does is it weakens the dollar. All of this spending causes inflation. What we're trying to do is slow that down, halt it.
We're on with Representative Chip Roy. So, Chip, you were saying that in addition to all these other horribles, most important is what?
Well, there's two main things that I just think every one of your very intelligent and awesome listeners need to know so they're armed to go and explain this to everybody else they're talking to. Number one, what we're trying to do is reduce the overall discretionary spending level down by about $131 billion. All that does is puts the federal bureaucracy where it was right before COVID, pre-COVID levels. Polls well, it's common sense. But what that would do is constrain the FBI, constrain the ATF, constrain the EPA and the Interior and all of these agencies with bureaucrats standing in the way of the American people, or worse than that, targeting them. So that's one thing that we would do. The second thing that we would do that's important is we would go back to the so-called Inflation Reduction Act and we would repeal the egregious expansion of the subsidies that were, some of which were in place, but now they're put on steroids and they're uncapped. These subsidies go primarily to billion-dollar corporations to make lots of money on the back of hardworking Americans trying to promote all of their wind farms and solar farms that literally cannot power America. It's grift. We're enriching radical leftists or crony capitalists who just want to make a buck off of your tax dollars or borrowed money, all putting out of business the gas-fired plants, coal-fired plants, the nuclear-fired plants that actually make us a formidable country with a reliable grid. I can't explain how horrible that is to our country, what it would do to us. The Goldman Sachs estimate is $1.2 trillion, but that's just money. This would decimate our powerful national security reliance on both fossil fuels and nuclear power to be independent. So we've got to follow through on this. It goes well beyond dollars and cents and to the actual strength of our country. And I just think the American people need to know those things.
Well, they will now. Excellent points. All right. Well, you'll keep us surprised, and we want to know at any relevant time when we should put pressure on members of Congress, too, Chip. Okay?
Well, thank you, Mark, and thanks to all the listeners out there. And put the pressure on now. Just tell Republicans to hold the line and stand up for them, and that's what we're going to try to do.
All right, hold on a second. Do we have some of them that are buckling already?
Well, no, we don't actually right now. I mean, God bless America. We've been fairly united, but, it's tough. And Kevin's out there talking to the president, and the president doesn't want to give. And as we get closer to the X date, donors start calling. Everybody gets wobbly, like, oh, my God, right. The sky's going to fall. Just everybody hold the line. We got to go fight for this country. That's what this is about.
Excellent. You're so right. All right, my brother, take care, and best to your family as well.
You too. God bless.
All right, God bless.